Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I should tell you that you can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm here right now at my Zoom studio in lovely Fairview, North Carolina. And what we do is each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce kind of a longtime friend, and he is Erik Dobell. Welcome aboard, Erik.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, well, it's my pleasure to have you. And by the way, you can also wave to all your fans and friends on Facebook if anybody's watching. So, okay, well, and you get my two friends, so we'll have maybe 7 watching. And I should mention that Erik is currently the star of Gatlinburg's #1 show, Impossibilities. Erik Dobell fell in love with the art of magic after a chance encounter at a mall in Ithaca, New York. 15 years later, he now performs over 300 shows in this intimate Irish theater located at the base of the iconic Gatlinburg Space Needle. And I understand that's where you are now?
Yes, that's where I'm actually, like this present moment, I'm actually in the Irish Theater.
Because I really thought I was a little disappointed. I thought that was from your home or something. You had this great screen in back of you.
Actually, the stage, yes.
No, I thought that's what you do. And when you come home at night, you just kind of open up the screen and into your home. That's your stage.
Curtains everywhere.
Erik, the question I have, I'm fascinated by lots of people, but especially magicians. How old were you when you got into magic?
Magic stories are usually very similar. Usually what it is that they saw a magician when they were very young, they fall in love with magic, they grow up, they become magicians. My story's a little different because I was actually a little older. I was still young. I was about 20 or 21 years old, right out of high school. Well, I was out of high school for a couple of years.
Right.
We're right out of high school, about to go into college. So I was a little older when I first got into magic. I was actually a little older the first time I saw a magician. That was the first time I saw a magician live, was about that age.
And so you saw a magician, and then what happened?
As I mentioned, it was in Ithaca, New York. It was actually at a mall, and I was there just kind of killing time. And there was this magician in the kiosk. By the way, for the kids listening to this, a mall is this big building we used to go. It's like a physical Amazon store. But he was selling some tricks from a little kiosk, and I'd never seen magic in person before. I've seen it on TV, but never live right in front of me. And I just fell in love. I bought a bunch of tricks. I went home. I learned how to do them. And then kind of just all went uphill or downhill from there, vertical.
Reminds me of a similar story. I don't think I ever told you, but Cynthia, my beautiful bride, and I had a similar experience. We were at an airport and saw a magician doing, a trick from a little kiosk, right? And so we bought the trick, and he told us it'd be the easiest thing in the world to do. Erik, it was the hardest thing I'd ever seen, And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. And I eventually gave it to a student and told the student, if you could do it, then show it to the class. And the kid did it. But, that was my one chance at magic. Could never figure it out. So you bought these tricks, you figured them out yourself, and you started doing them. What happened after you started doing them? Where did you start performing?
Yeah, well, around that time, I knew I wanted to be in show business, but I didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily. And around that time, I started going to college. I started taking theater courses. So I was actually doing sort of small plays before I did anything else. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I started, I would do tricks for friends, and then my friends would go and tell their friends about the tricks that I did. And then next thing I knew, I was doing little house parties, performing at bars, probably way sooner than I was qualified to do.
Do you remember your first gig?
Ooh.
First gig you got paid for?
The first one I got paid for, it was probably at a bar in Ithaca, New York, actually, because I was doing bar magic pretty early on. So it was probably that. I wish I knew. I should probably make up a good story for that.
We should, and I'm surprised. So you didn't keep the first check or the first $20 bill and frame it somewhere? It would be, in the back of the screen.
No, No, I'm afraid I'm not that sentimental.
But no, I like what you just said. You could make up a story. I wouldn't know the difference, your first performance. But you know what I always thought, Eric, I tell people this, wouldn't it be cool if we had recorded it, and you could show, your first performance ever? That would be
Yeah.
cool if we could have that.
Are you going to surprise me? Do you have a recording?
Remember, there was a TV show. Remember, it was This Is Your Life or something?
Yeah.
That people.
That's not right.
Eric, when you were 4 years old, here's the first opportunity you ever performed at. So you performed. Now, are you from Ithaca originally? You went to school there.
A town called Elmira, New York, which is
Okay.
Probably an hour, I think, from Ithaca. Right. So I grew up in that area.
So now you started performing then as a magician in the college area. How did it go from there to where you are now?
Ooh, it took a long time. First, I moved to Ohio. And when I was in Ohio, I was doing more high-profile gigs, like close-up gigs when I was living there. Then I moved to North Carolina. I was probably in Ohio for about 3 or 4 years. I moved to North Carolina to the Triad area, the Greensboro area. I kind of kept the momentum going. And it was somewhere in that time frame I met Chris Collins, who you would have seen when we were doing the duo show.
Right.
And we started doing the Impossibility show together. And then I ended up here.
Well, now, are you still doing it as a duo, the two of you?
I'm afraid not. Chris is actually injured right now. He had an accident a few years ago. He's okay. He's okay. Right. But he hurt his leg pretty bad.
Oh, sorry to hear that. So it's now just you doing the show?
It's just me currently, yeah. We're not sure what the future holds necessarily, but right now it's been me doing the show.
Well, that must have been quite a shift for you because, again, I had seen you initially in North Carolina 6, 7 years ago. It was a duo. It was a lot of fun. So to all of a sudden have to shift from a duo to a single show, that must have been an adjustment of sorts.
That part of it wasn't as bad as you think because I already had a solo show before I started working. So yeah, it was jarring, but it wasn't too bad, that transition.
So that's really exciting. So now talk a little bit about the fact that, and I haven't seen you obviously in Tennessee yet, but so now all of a sudden you were traveling around the country doing different shows. I saw you at North Carolina stage,
Yes.
That's where I first met you. And I was so excited because then you got this gig. Talk about how you got that and what the gig entails.
That's a pretty funny story. So my wife was teaching English in South Korea for a few years. And it was in those few years I developed Impossibilities with Chris. So we started doing the touring and all that. And I was flying back and forth to see my wife and coming back here to do these shows. And at one point, the plan was actually just stay in Korea. We were just going to live there. But I booked, okay, let me back up a little bit. So Impossibilities got created because I was flying back and forth. And one of the times I came back because I had a TV show that we were filming, like a real TV show for real money for a real studio. And as soon as the plane landed, I found out that the TV show was canceled, as happens with that kind of business. So I was stuck here in North Carolina with no job, no wife, no money. And that's when I talked to Chris and he's like, well, you're here. Why don't we do this show? So that was about the time that we met, of course, when we were doing the Asheville show and all that. The reason I wanted to back up is because one of the trips back from Korea into the Asheville area, I was staying with my wife's parents. And I heard that there was a mentalist show at the Gatlinburg Space Needle. And there's not a lot of mentalists floating around. So I'm decided it's not that far of a drive. I'm going to go see this guy. So I call the Space Needle up on the phone. I say, yeah, how do I get tickets to see the mentalist? And the guy on the phone tells me, oh, the mentalist isn't here anymore. That show closed. And I, really? Would they be interested in another show? And the next thing I know, we're sitting down with the owners of the Space Needle and we're hammering out the details. And then we opened.
Because that's some story. But your show at that time, because when I saw it, it was kind of a mentalist show when I saw it. And let me backtrack a little bit on my end. What's the difference then between a magic show, if you will, versus a mentalist show?
Yeah, the difference between magic and mentalism is the type of effects that you're seeing. So like a magician will take a coin and make it vanish in his hand, or saw a woman into halves, as where a mentalist will do things that look like psychic powers, like a prediction, mind reading, psychokinesis, things like that. So it's mentalism is magic, but it's like a category of magic.
Now, can you do some? You mentioned you bought those tricks way back when. Can you do
Yeah.
some of those? You can do some of those tricks too, like make coins disappear. Or I guess most magicians learn how to do that, right?
Oh yeah. I actually, the show right now, it's comedy, magic, and mind reading. So the show right now is actually about half mentalism, half magic. So I'm the Master Mentalist, but half the show is magic right now, and that's the sort of give the show because we get a lot of families. We get a lot of families, we get a lot of kids, so that kind of helps keep the show for everybody. So yeah, I do magic as well.
I'm thinking, as we're speaking, I'd love to get you on the show. Where is it? It's on TV on I think it's Fox. The two guys, Penn and Teller. Do you watch that show?
Fool Us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to get on that?
Oh, every year. Yeah. If you know something, let me know.
No, because I'd love to see you on that show. I think about you every time I see it. Hey, I know this guy could do that. But that's just a fun show, isn't it? I have fun with it, at least.
It's one of the best magic shows ever. Yeah. On paper, it sounds like a terrible idea, but
it does, doesn't it?
Awesome.
Have you ever seen them, Penn and Teller?
Yeah, I've seen them a few times. Yeah. I saw them twice, I think, in Vegas, and then actually right before everything happened, my wife and I went and saw them in Atlanta.
Oh, really? Because I'd love to see them too. But it's kind of a perfect segue, because I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I think you and I talked about this off the air, that we're not going to see the whole show, but I understand we might be able to get a little sneak preview of what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to give you guys a little sneak preview.
Okay.
See, I'm going to move my body a little funky because I thought I was going to have the vertical,
yeah,
not the TikTok view.
Right. Well, that'll be the trick next time. We'll see if you can figure out the horizontal. But
yeah, I'm not sure why I'm doing that. But
you have to turn the camera around, but there's a way to do it. Okay, go ahead.
So I have a deck of cards here. Okay, I'm going to have you pick a card, but of course I can't spread the cards out and have you pick one. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to name a card. Okay, you can name whatever card you want, but don't make it a super obvious card like an ace or something. Try to name a card that I wouldn't be able to know.
Okay. Now,
all right.
Do I tell it to you?
Oh yeah, say it out loud.
Okay. 3 of clubs.
The 3. Speaking of Penn and Teller, you want to change your mind? Or you want to stick with the 3 of clubs?
I'll stick with the 3 of clubs.
3 clubs. Okay. Now this box of cards that I was holding there the entire time,
right?
It is an ordinary deck, or excuse me, it's a regular deck of cards, but it's not an ordinary deck of cards. And what I mean by that is because I bought these cards from the Walgreens across the street earlier. Okay, and I did open the box up, and they are still in new deck order, right?
It looks it. Yeah.
I took one card out of the deck and I did something a little unusual to it. So again, you said the 3 of clubs, right?
Right.
All right, we're going to pull the 3 of clubs up right there. You can see the 3 of clubs. It's the only 3 of clubs in the deck. Again, it's the new deck. Okay. Nothing can be more fair than that. You could have said any card. I even gave you the option to change your mind. But you stuck with 3 of clubs. Here's what I did to that deck. I took one card from the box, and on the back of it, I drew a big black X. It just so happens that the card I drew the big black X on was the 3 of clubs.
Very cool. And that's the only one that has the big X on it, huh?
The only one with the big X on it. And if you were here, I could let you inspect the deck.
Okay, very cool. But the only bad thing about this trick now, you can't use it again, right?
No, because if you say a different card, I get it wrong.
No, not. You have the big X on one card, so you have to throw out the whole deck now.
Well, no, I'll just do it to somebody else that I think is going to say the 3 of clubs.
Now, very cool though, Chris. So
thank you.
You're talking about, I'm talking about the time I bought this one trick, couldn't figure it out. How do magicians, I want to ask you to reveal secrets, but how do magicians develop tricks, if you will?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. A lot of magic, a lot of putting together like a magic show is actually curating magic. It's going through books, going through videos, learning from friends, and kind of figuring out what you like and kind of turning that into a show. There are some special people out there that are very good at creating tricks, and boy, I don't know how their brain works. I really don't know how somebody sits down and just comes up with, because I've done stuff where like I've combined methods and created different routines and things. But yeah, just coming up with tricks. Boy, I wish I had the answer.
Well, no, because even that when you just did there, I was pretty
Yeah.
impressed. It's just really cool. Have you ever done a trick? Here's a question for you that backfired on you, that didn't work the way you thought it would work. That
Yep.
you practice it, and then all of a sudden, instead of 3 of clubs, they actually pull out the 7 of hearts. Have you ever had that happen? A trick completely bombed on you?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What happens?
Well, off the top of it's actually happened a bit. Off the top of my head, there was a brief period of time I was doing comedy clubs, or
Right.
comedy club, actually. It was a comedy club, I think in Ohio I was going. And I had a prediction that I was making that was in an envelope. And I went on stage, I did my jokes, and then I started to do the prediction. And I'm asking people the information, give me a number, give me a color, all this other stuff. And then I opened the prediction to show how I predicted all this stuff. And I realized that I forgot to put it into the envelope. So I had the entire audience do this entire thing. And the prediction was actually sitting in my car. It was not in the envelope.
so how'd you get out of that?
Envelope. No idea why I asked any of this stuff.
So how'd you get out of that? Well, that's where the comedy comes in? What?
You don't.
Or you left the theater. You made a quick exit. You went behind the screen. Well, it's funny. I won't mention the magician I saw, but same thing too. Eric, years ago, I was at a show with my daughter, and they asked for a volunteer. And you know me, I kind of volunteer, and I was really crushed because I really thought there was such a thing as magic, And I'm on stage with 20 other people, and then in a street voice, or I forgot what they call it, but a voice, he whispers to me, a stage voice, kind of thing, do something, I was shocked because, I thought this is a whole trick, and he was having me help him with it, And I thought about just the question I asked you. I guess that's where a magician's sense of humor or timing comes in. That if something screws up, they got to be able to come out of it. So if I had said, "Hey, you're a fake," this is not true. You have to be able to handle it. Do you ever you're talking when you used to bars? You ever get hecklers?
Not in the bars. The comedy clubs, you would get hecklers. I used to do burlesque show. I got heckled a lot at the burlesque shows. That actually really. That's probably the reason I'm not bothered by hecklers, because have you been to burlesque shows?
Not lately.
Not lately. Okay. Well, anyways,
no,
a burlesque show. Basically, it's beautiful women doing these like striptease acts. Okay, and then about halfway through the show, this guy comes out and I do believe the audience thought I was going to do a striptease. Not. So I got heckled a lot at the burlesque shows. Those are probably the worst ones. But the fake thing is kind of funny because I've actually been called a fake a few times, and my answer to that is yeah.
Or the other alternative, I thought in the case where I saw it, Eric, is I thought that the magician would just say, "Hey," almost like you said, "Hey, I just wanted everybody to see this, that this is not prearranged, and I wanted this guy, whatever." There's a way, I guess, and part of doing your burlesque stuff helps you able to handle any situation. I guess you mentioned the burlesque story, interesting. I imagine little kids, when used to magic shows, for little kids, sometimes I understand they can be a pain, that the kid, knows everything and wants to see everything, and that can be a difficult audience.
Yeah, I love performing for kids. The thing you got to keep in mind with kids is that they don't fall for stuff like adults do.
Right.
More. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but kids are a lot harder to fool than adults. So that's the only real difficulty with that. But yeah, no, I guess I've been heckled by kids a little bit.
The thing is, yeah, I fall for anything, you know. So I guess for you, I'd be a great. That's why you called on me the one time. I'd be a great volunteer because you know I'm up there. I guess you can also talk to me about that, Erik, too. I guess you can pretty much guess when you call on somebody from the audience whether they'd be a good person to call on stage. Can you kind of figure that out?
You know what? I used to think that I could figure that out.
Right.
I think I don't know if I can do it or not. I do have some techniques I use though. Like if I have a trick in the show that really requires the person to have a certain demeanor or certain level of intelligence or whatever it is, or else the trick might get screwed up.
Right.
I do have things in the show, little things I might say in their direction, or a small trick I might do with them that can kind of give me an idea of how they might react if I bring them up on stage. But you know, I feel like you're kind of gambling a lot when you're bringing people up. You don't really know what you're going to get.
Well, imagine just like you said, you're looking if they're enthusiastic or if they're wide awake, as opposed to if they're falling asleep on you or, you know, giving you cross arms the whole show. Probably not a good person to call up on stage. You know?
Yeah. Well, what you want that person that looks engaged and looks like they're having fun, but is not jumping out of their skin to come on stage.
If somebody came to Gatlinburg to see your show, what would they see?
Well, they would see us interactive comedy, magic, and mind reading show. We're an 89 seat theater here in Gatlinburg, so I am right up close to you. I think the front row is probably about a foot away from the stage. And because of the intimacy of the theater, again, it's very interactive. I work very much with the audience. So that's what they're going to see. They're going to have a lot of fun.
And one of the things that's kind of cool is that, like you said, they're going to be entertained, because I remember way back when, it's like a fun show too. You know, it's not like, you're not a super serious type show.
Yeah, I want to have fun. That's the goal of what I do.
Yeah. How influenced are you by other magicians, mentalists you see on TV? Does that influence you at all?
You know, honestly, I guess I don't see a lot of magicians on TV. I am very influenced by Penn and Teller, I think. David Blaine was a big influence on me, especially early on. But currently, I guess I just got busy. But I don't see magic on TV as much as I used to.
Because I'm a little disappointed, I have to tell you, Erik, in that
when
I had you on the air today. Reminds me of when I saw David Blaine Nashville. He's there about maybe 6 years ago, and he submerged himself in a water tank, you know, for like 20 minutes or something. So I was hoping you'd show us that today. You don't have your water tank with you?
I'm not going to drown myself. No.
Okay. But I mean, pretty impressive though to watch, you know, him.
I can barely go upstairs. I don't think I'm going to be holding my breath for any world records.
Talk a little bit about also one of the things you do, which is kind of cool, is that I won't say you're the first one I saw, but you're certainly very active in social media. And talk a little bit about what you try to do with your social media postings.
Yeah, we try to, with our being here in Gatlinburg, we use our social media to not just promote us, but also promote the town of Gatlinburg, which was an idea we had really early on when we came in, because, well, for a few reasons. One of them is that I don't think people are looking for magic shows necessarily, and they're not going to be following us necessarily. But people do love Gatlinburg, and I love Gatlinburg, and I want to, you know, share that love with people online and, you know, entice them to come to the area. And then maybe by, you know, the third degree, they also come to our show.
So when you post about Gatlinburg, what kinds of information do you post?
All sorts of stuff. Yeah. Gatlinburg has no shortage of beautiful things to take pictures of. So we do a lot of pictures. We do a lot of, like with other events going on, other businesses will post about those. And then we also shoot a lot of videos for YouTube. We'll do restaurant reviews. We go to other businesses and do little mini videos with them, do some tricks for them. So that's, you know, in general what we do.
So if folks want to find, so you call them, I think, 1 minute reviews. Is that correct?
Minute review.
Minute. I'm sorry, minute reviews. I love it.
Yes,
Minute.
everybody's wrong.
No, but you spell it the same way though, right?
Yes, it's spelled the same way. Yeah.
Okay, but minute reviews, and it's funny. You're giving me an idea that when I get to Gatlinburg, it'd be cool. I do that a little bit too. I'll go into a restaurant, just do a quick review. So next time, I've been to Gatlinburg for a long time, but next time I'll do one for your show. I can't wait to see the show again. But who knows? Well, talk a little bit about that, because who knows? One of the exciting things, and you're one of the few entertainers I know this is true of, that you've actually been performing all during the pandemic. Is that correct?
Yes.
Talk about that.
We're one of the few people. Yeah, it's been a little strange. We were off for, I think it was 2 months when everybody was quarantined, maybe a month and a half. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. We came back, and we're doing all sorts of protocols to try and keep people safe. We're half capacity, hand sanitizer, masks. I actually wore a mask for about half the show. Basically, whenever I'm interacting with people, I'm all masked up. And yeah, people are still coming into town. We're still doing shows. It's weird. It's very weird, but it's also it's good to still be working.
It's just, as you describe it, one of the things I miss is seeing performers. I miss it so much. And I knew it, Erik, when I saw Hamilton on TV. I got Disney just to get Hamilton, see it. I was in tears when I'm watching it, because aside from your show, I haven't seen a live show for, even know about a live show. Occasionally in Nashville, they're starting to have some or outside in the middle of winter, but having an indoor show is pretty exciting to be able to do it, Yeah. And so you were saying, though, aside from the masks and other procedures, you also restricted a little bit on size. Is that correct, in terms of how many people you have?
We're capacity, and we're social distancing the seats. So like if groups are together, so if you're a group of 4, but then we separate you from like the other groups of 4.
So it must be exciting for you, though, to be performing for a live audience, because, can you imagine when we saw TV, Bill Maher and all other people performing before nobody, it wouldn't be quite the same.
Yeah.
Your show.
No, it would be very difficult for me to not have anybody in the audience. Yeah, I couldn't do like the late night comedy people right now. I noticed are doing shows in their closets. It looks like.
Well, what's the fewest people you ever performed before?
The fewest people, you know what? For a long time, it was 3.
Yeah.
New York, I got booked, I think, at a coffee shop, and three little old women showed up. I did my show for 3 people. Since that time, it's been 2. So 2 is actually the least I've done the show for.
Quick story, similar kind of thing. I saw a show in Nashville a couple of years ago. My wife and I were the only ones in the audience. There were 3 actors. But the classic, Erik, after the show, they had a talk back. And they had to talk back to the 2 of us. They brought in the usher. They brought in the ticket salesperson. Yeah. But, I can't believe it that they actually did this talk back. Do you have that too? When you do a show, I would imagine, other than idiots like me, but people want to talk to you after the show or find out, and just socialize afterwards?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things with the social media that's been so great too, is that we have a small but very active social media following that we interact with a lot. And then as far as the show goes, after the show, we actually do meet people afterwards, and they can do a picture, ask me questions, whatever it is.
No, I remember that. I thought that was very sweet, because I remember Cynthia and I did that after your show. You were hanging around afterwards. And it was just kind of fun to speak to 2 real mentalists. That was just kind of cool, and take a picture with you. Erik, if folks want to find out more, whether about you or the show, best bet is to do what?
Yes, the best place to find out more information about the show is at iristheater.com. That's theater with an ER. So iristheater.com. That's our main website where you can find out information, see videos, our blog, and buy tickets to the show, and see our schedule.
Okay.
Follow us online. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on TikTok, YouTube. We're even on Tumblr. We just don't post there anymore. But you go to sites, you type in Impossibilities Show or Impossibilities Gatlinburg, will pop up.
Okay. I encourage people to do that, because two things. One, as Erik indicated, a lot of fun, kind of good information on it too. And if you want to see these guys, and I'm telling you, I will get to see you.
Yeah.
You're in for a treat, or not see
Well,
these guys, see Erik.
Related to the social media stuff, next time you're in town, we should do a minute review together.
I love it. Minute review.
Review.
Wait, I'm going to put you, I'll have a challenge for you and then I'll let you go. I love the idea. I'll ask you if you want, and I'll run it. If you want to do a minute, I love that, minute review of Blaine's World, the blog. You know, you get my blog, right?
Yes, I get your blog.
Yeah. And this show will be in the blog too, but I'll give you a chance. If you want to do a minute review, that's your challenge, kid.
I haven't done a minute review for something other than a restaurant, but
okay, well, this would be just if you want to play
Fair
with
enough.
it. Anyway, real pleasure. So much fun getting to speak to you. And again, my hope within the next 10 years, if we actually are getting to see, theater and going out places, you'll be at top on our list.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person.
Okay, well, this is great. Then thanks a lot for being my guest. I wish you well. Speak to you soon, buddy.
Yeah,
okay, thanks. Now, what's this trick, Erik? I'm going to make you disappear, right? If this all works out well, and you are disappeared. Okay, and let me find my other guest. And as Deanna works her way into the studio, and I think we'll find her in a second. She's going to join us in a second. I'll mention that as she's working her way into the studio, I'd like to remind our listeners that WPVM's mission is to foster a community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. And so look at my guest. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, WPVMFM.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right side. And now that Deanna's here, and I think we see her. Hey, Deanna, I'd like to welcome my guest the second half hour, and she is Dr. Deanna Tyler with Apex Brain Center. And Deanna, you can, first of all, wave to all your fans and friends on Facebook. So,
hey guys. Okay,
everybody's watching. And Deanna has been a guest before on the show. She's a community associate with in charge of community engagement. We'll ask you what that means in a second. And she's with Apex Brain Centers. And I'll ask you right away then, since I'm not sure of the term, but you're the community engagement person for Apex Brain Centers. Well, even before that, back up. What is Apex Brain Centers?
So Apex Brain Centers is an organization that provides holistic brain rehab. So we are essentially trying to do recovery from traumatic brain injury, concussion, dementia, anything even into learning and behavior disorders, which also includes addiction. So it's a way to treat the brain without using medication or surgery, which is why with our chiropractic background, this fit perfectly within our profession.
Okay, and you mentioned your chiropractic background. So I guess you were trained as a chiropractor. When did you start training as a chiropractor?
So I went to school for a chiropractic degree for about 3.5 years. And then what we do is we are able to specialize just like any other medical health profession. So we got specialized in through the American Chiropractic Neurology Board. So it's a neurology neuroscience degree that you can get in addition to then specialize and treat more specifically the group of population you would like to treat.
So now, when you went as an undergraduate, right? You studied as that wasn't your. What was your major as an undergraduate?
In undergraduate studies, I did exercise science.
Okay, and so how did you know you wanted to then become a chiropractor?
I went to chiropractor my entire life.
Okay.
So my whole family, my mom found chiropractic care when she was training for a marathon many years ago, and then she just kept going back. So for maintenance care about once a month. So I started seeing a chiropractor when I was 12 years old, and then I was spoiled and I always wanted to go back. So as I was growing up, it just seemed like a great career.
So you're giving me an idea here that, so if I went to a chiropractor, I too could run in a marathon. You know, that's all I have to do. Just so I can see you. But
that's all you got to do.
Okay. But what's interesting, I think, about your background, which I want to talk a little bit about, is that, you know, people, including me, have a typical viewpoint of a chiropractor. You know, and you grew up as a 12-year-old, and you were, I guess, the term is you were getting adjusted. You got adjustments most of your life. By the way, do you still get adjustments?
I do. I definitely do. Yeah.
Well, explain a little bit, and Dr. Michael Trayford with Apex Brain Centers has explained this as well. But for the audience, explain the difference, so a little bit, between what you do versus what a typical chiropractor does. In other words, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't, with Apex Brain Centers, you're not doing adjustments. Is that correct?
We actually do adjustments.
Oh, physical
So it's a little
adjustments
bit
also?
different. It is.
How
So
so?
what we do is, when we are looking at a neurological condition, we approach it from 3 angles. So we're dealing with the metabolic. So we do functional medicine treatments. We deal with the structural, which would be dealing with the musculoskeletal components, which would include the adjusting. And then we also obviously deal with the neurological, which is where our brain rehab and our cold laser and hyperbaric all falls in.
Okay, but I guess that's the kind of the beauty, I guess, if you will, what you folks do, because what you folks are doing is kind of, at least in the Asheville area, perhaps throughout the country, a little bit different than, quote, the traditional chiropractic. You know, that I'm not going to go to you every week for an adjustment so I can feel better when I run. You know, it's I have other issues I'm going to see you at. And you mentioned a term, so I'm going to have to put you on the spot here to tell me what it means. But until I spoke to you the other day, I have to admit that I had never heard of, let me see if I get it right, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. How do you pronounce it?
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it close. And so what is hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
So the easiest way to understand it really is to break down the term itself. So hyperbaric, meaning that hyper means above, and
Right.
the baric is pressure. So you are going under more pressure than we typically have on Earth, just while we're at sea level. So it is taking additional oxygen while being under pressure, which then allows for you to absorb more than you naturally can being at sea level. So it's a term that came from a diving background. So it was first started by individuals who suffered from a condition called the bends.
Right, I've
Which is
heard of
what
it. Yeah.
happens when you go too far in the sea level and you have issues with your tank, right? So that is how this entire hyperbaric chamber idea came to really the US, and how it became more popularized here, but it's really been around for a long time.
About when did it start?
So we're looking at the 17th century.
Oh, really? Okay.
So 350 years ago. At the time, they actually didn't, they had their first chamber, didn't even have oxygen. So just being under pressure, there's benefits to that alone as well.
So how long has it been in this country, or when did it start becoming
So
popular?
in the US, we're looking at the 1980s. So around the World War I. That's
Now,
when it kind of got brought here.
1980s, would you say?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, 81. Yep.
Yeah, that was like Vietnam. That's even after Vietnam. It wasn't World War I. It was.
Well, you can
Oh.
tell I was born after that time, huh?
Okay, no,
Can't
yeah.
tell you about the war stories.
Okay,
But
yeah, no.
yeah, around 80s.
The 80s became, yeah, that was after World War II. But anyway, so it became popular. How do you pick it up, or how do you learn it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
How do you learn it? That you went to school, but is this something you picked up more recently, learning the technology?
I was interning at an office when I was in school, so we get to kind of work in the field a little bit. And the office that I was working at, they actually had a chamber. So I got to see firsthand what some of the great results were. But when it comes to hyperbaric and functional neurology, which is what we specialize in the office, there's some people who are starting to dip their toes into it, because what we realize is that really a lot of the stuff that we do with brain rehab, you know, the 2 components that it needs is it needs energy, which is mitochondria, and then we need oxygen. So those 2 components are addressed by the hyperbaric chamber or even the cold laser therapy. So these are really great therapies that make the work that we do a little bit more effective, and that people can handle more at one time.
You know, you mentioned a chamber. So at Apex Brain Centers, there's actually a chamber you have there?
Yes.
Is that relatively new, the chamber?
Yes. So we have had the oxygen chamber for a couple of months now.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's been pretty rewarding to see some of the changes. I personally use it myself, And Dr. Trafer was trying to get me to go and spend the night there, which there's people that do it. So like LeBron, I believe it is, and Justin Bieber, they sleep in the chamber. So he was trying to get me to spend the night and see, as an experiment, to see how I feel, because I use it for migraine headaches. So that's why I use the chamber personally.
And does it help you with the migraine headaches?
It really has. And I just had a patient in today, which was really cool. She came in with a headache that was at about a 7 out of 10. She was obviously in a lot of pain. Even her heart rate was up. We did cold laser therapy. I did some vagus nerve stimulation on her tongue, got her in the chamber. She left with pain, 0 out of 10.
Really?
She was in the office for an hour and a half. So it was pretty awesome.
And how long does that effect last, do you think?
So migraines are really cyclical, right?
Sure.
So really, once you can knock down the headache, people usually, depending on how frequent they are, for her, you know, hopefully a little while, but she's been doing hyperbaric chamber therapy for, I believe she did 5 or 10 sessions. So that was kind of her goal and her trial to see how it affected her migraines.
Very cool. Now talk about, there are some other health benefits. So you mentioned migraine would be one. Who else could benefit from this?
So really the world of hyperbaric oxygen therapy is really wild. So obviously individuals suffer from traumatic brain injuries, especially anoxic injuries. So that's just a fancy term for somebody who unfortunately has lost oxygen to their brain for an extended period of time. So whether it's from anaphylactic shock or from a heart attack, from a stroke, sometimes those individuals need this the most, but also things like mild traumatic brain injuries, which is concussions that are really common around here.
Sure.
Individuals who have autoimmune disorders. So if you have Hashimoto's or multiple sclerosis. So those people really fall under that category as well. But even diving into individuals who have cognitive decline or dementia, anyone with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, I mean, the research out there is really vast. So Dr. Trafer and I, we're nerds when it comes to research. So that's kind of our thing, which is why we get along so well. But we did a lot of extensive research about the chamber that we wanted to get at the pressure that we wanted to get it at. So that's really where a lot of the research is showing, is that 1.3 atmospheres for neurological conditions, because it doesn't require more pressure to get some of the same benefits. So there's a lot lower risk the lower the pressure.
We'll talk about the process, Dr. Tyler, in terms of, you mentioned concussions, for example, are very real. I'm going to ask you just an aside here. Cynthia, my beautiful bride, and I are very concerned. Her sister just had an aneurysm, you know, and doesn't seem to be doing that well. You know, we're a little concerned, very concerned. Can this help with an aneurysm?
Yes. So one of the things that it actually does is, after about 10 to 20 dives, they've shown in research that it actually can regrow new blood vessels. It's called angiogenesis. But also doing things like reducing inflammation, which after something like an aneurysm, there's a lot of global inflammation, which is where the healing kind of impairs. So for those reasons alone, but even looking at stem cells, which is our ability to really heal our own body, right? So it's really just about taking what you already have and just enhancing it. So it's not really adding much more, but just utilizing what you already have and tapping into that.
Well, you mentioned the term just before, what is it, dive? You know, you call it the dive. Explain what that is exactly.
So a dive is the term that they use because what you're actually doing is you're going about 1.3 atmospheres is the chamber that we have. 1 atmosphere is about 33 feet underwater. So really it's kind of, people think they're going over, you know, the pressure, they're going up, but it's instead you're going down in the pressure. So that's why they call it diving. But like I said, it has to do with that background of how it really began around here. And so the scientific terms have a lot to do with that condition, bends.
How long does it take to go through the procedure?
So usually a dive, which is like one session, is anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. And it's pretty relaxing. I mean, most people will take a nap. So I used to always ask to use it in the morning when I get to work, because that's not a bad start to the day. You know, get to work, take a nap, you know, not too bad. So a lot of people just relax. Some people read when they're in there. Other people use that time to meditate or do something else productive that they've been kind of setting. You know, it's hard to find time to take care of yourself.
Sure.
So when you're locked in there, there's not a whole lot you can do other than, you know, do something for yourself.
Well, what I'm hearing you say, which is kind of interesting. So you say you're in this, whatever it is, but you're not it's not something like if you get claustrophobia, or should you be concerned that, are you locked into something, or what exactly happens?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because sometimes we do have individuals who have gone through traumatic experiences where they don't like feeling out of control. So what we actually do is it's a two-way zipper. So when I go to use it personally, I actually zip myself up in the chamber. It's not the easiest thing to do yourself, so it's always easier when someone does it for you. So that's how we do it in the office. But we teach somebody how to decrease the pressure themselves. So we'll actually let them control the pressure sometimes just while they get used to it, to take it a little bit slower. And then we also show them, you know, if they needed to get out, this is the way. But the chamber itself expands pretty large. So really, I'm 5'2", so I can almost sit up without having my head touch. If you're obviously a taller individual, you know, 6'5", you know, may not be as spacious for you, but for the average folk, it's plenty big enough. So the chamber we have is actually large enough for 2 people, because we deal with a lot of anoxic brain injuries with younger children. So we like to have the parent in with them. Yep. So we do that because some of these children have a difficult time communicating. So to make sure that they're comfortable, we'll have the parent come in with them. So the chamber is large enough for 2 individuals to be comfortable.
And so what you also said I thought was kind of interesting, which I would like, is it's also that you can read at the same time you're going through this, because I don't think I'd like to, you know, you might like it, but I don't think I'd like to sit anywhere for like 60 minutes to 90 minutes just, you know, sitting there. I'm not into meditation, but it's lit. You don't have to be in the dark to go through this.
No, there's a window, and then obviously there's natural light in the room as well. And there's like a opening up top, so you're getting light from above and from the side. So you don't feel, you know, you're not closed off. And most people will, it's really just so soothing that you will just naturally be sleepy and probably go to sleep. So
Talk a little bit about something else you said. You mentioned stem cells before. Okay.
Mhm.
Is this something that you can use like as an option to not going through stem cells, or does it serve the same kind of purpose?
So again, really good question, because we have people doing both. So we have individuals who try and use hyperbaric chamber before getting stem cells because of the cost. So it's worth trying. But what we've actually seen a lot of is when you do hyperbaric chamber therapy before and after stem cell injections, it will upregulate the stem cells that you are getting, so that therefore the treatment's more effective. So that's what really, you know, if someone was to go through stem cell therapy, you know, whether it's before or after, really a lot of that has to do with just our body's ability to take in what we're given and do something with it. So if we can decrease inflammation and we can upregulate our own stem cells, then obviously the stem cells we're getting will work a little bit more appropriately, because our body will know what to do with them.
The thing I find most interesting about this ties in, I know, with an interest of Dr. Trafford, and that has to do with concussions, you know, because concussions are such a big problem, especially with athletes. And you mentioned that this has been used now in terms of helping out some athletes.
Yeah, definitely. Post-concussion syndrome is, you know, a lot of times it goes untreated.
Right.
And we often will see somebody 10, 20 years after their post-concussion syndrome has really already started and never has gone away. But research has shown that it's really not too late to get hyperbaric chamber therapy. So you can get benefits regardless if your injury was, you know, earlier this afternoon, or if it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So
and how does it work in terms of the benefits? So like you just said, and I know Dr. Trafford always prefers it, you know, when somebody has a concussion, get into you right away, you know, as opposed to, you know, 3 years later. But if somebody has a concussion in a ball game, sees you that Monday, how does it work in terms of how you treat them and work with them and then use this therapy?
Yeah, so when we're dealing with an acute injury,
right,
we typically, you know, at that point, you have to be careful. So that's why therapies like this, which are passive, meaning that it doesn't require a whole lot of energy or effort on the patient's part. Those are therapies that are really helpful in the very beginning, because obviously there's going to be, you know, increased sensitivity to any type of stimulation. And when you look at brain rehab, most of it is using receptors to stimulate certain parts of the brain. So it's a really great therapy to get somebody through that first initial stage, so that then when they go and do the therapy, it's going to be more effective. But really, I mean, post-concussion syndrome, you know, it's, most people will do the wait and see. And typically you should start seeing a lot of the symptoms that you have go away within about a week. So, you know, a lot of individuals realize they linger a lot longer.
Now you mentioned other therapy, Deanna, and that was let me see if I have it right. It was a light therapy, or what was the other term you used before? What therapy is that?
It's low-level laser therapy.
And what is that?
So essentially what it's doing is it uses certain frequencies of light to, again, do a lot of the big things that hyperbaric does. So it basically will increase your mitochondrial function. It will reduce inflammation and increase blood flow. So we actually have a low-level laser that we use on the brain. So it's safe to do that. And the larger laser that we have, it's called an zirconia, and we actually will place it on the brain depending on where your injury was. So, or depending on what symptoms you present with. So if somebody, you know, presents with, let's say, ADHD, then we know that we can isolate certain parts of the brain a little bit more specifically. But it's a really great tool, again, just to help somebody have the energy to get through the rehab, because even though it's not physically demanding, it's very cognitively demanding. So people are usually pretty tired. So it gives us an opportunity to, what I tell people is really recharge your batteries. So that's what I tell them when I put them on the laser.
Now, if somebody comes to see you, do they get both treatments, or do you try the laser first and then this other, or how do you determine who gets what treatment when?
So if somebody comes for an intensive program, which is where someone will come from 5 to 15 days, we typically everyone will get cold laser therapy. And then hyperbaric oxygen therapy will be added for those individuals who we feel that it would benefit specifically. So sometimes we will add that on, and other times we won't. But what we actually have going on right now is we are basically have a deal to combine both of them, because obviously when you do laser therapy and hyperbaric therapy, it's going to be a lot more effective. So for individuals who are not going through the program, there's a deal on that specifically, because we would ideally, in the ideal world, everyone would be using both.
You mentioned before, which must have been very exciting, this woman you worked with migraines and saw a tremendous difference. Have you seen some other success stories like that you'll see somebody you or Dr. Trafford start working with, and then within a period, and talk about how long that period is before you can see a change?
Yeah, so we have another individual who we've been working with, and he has an anoxic brain injury. So he has been going through our program. He came through once, and then now has come back just for an intensive model of hyperbaric. That means that he signed up to do 20 sessions, and then they loved the results enough to now do 20 more sessions. So this individual, his biggest things that he's dealing with is was just even the energy to get through all the rehab. So he's working also with swim therapy, he's doing speech therapy, he's doing PT, OT, you know, the whole gamut. And so what I've noticed with him, and what she's seen as well, his care partner, she basically has noticed that his speech, it's getting better, it's getting easier. So for the first time, he was able to close his mouth the whole time yesterday when they were in the therapy room. And if you know much about really a severe brain injury, you know, that's a really common presentations that the mouth will be open. And I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to talk with your mouth open? Because it's really, really hard. So when we're trying to work on things like speech therapy, those basic skills are essential, right? But also things like decreased muscle spasticity. So when we have a brain injury, we'll be very spastic. And you're so spastic that you can cause bruising and cramping to a point where there's a lot of extreme pain. So hyperbaric therapy has been shown to help with that muscle spasticity, which is why it's also used for conditions like cerebral palsy, right?
That must be very exciting for you as a chiropractor and trainer as well, to see somebody, you know, come in and see an improvement. That must really be rewarding, you know, for you when that happens.
It is. There's, you know, it's definitely nice to be on the end of being able to do something about what I see. But it's been one of the most rewarding things. It took me a long time to get here, a lot of years of education, a lot of years of nightless sleep, to a point where now I feel like I have to study. I'm like anxious. I feel like I should be doing something. But it was definitely worth it, because I mean, it's just, I think any job that you're doing, if you feel like you're helping people and you're making a difference, you're going to be a much happier individual yourself.
Well, it's going to be exciting, Dr. Tyler, when we speak to you next, is then you'll have gone through the overnight experience, you know, and then you can give us
That would be fun. I really will plan on doing that, probably.
Has Dr. Schaefer done that?
No, but I think he should take his own advice.
Right, exactly. Let him try it first. One of the things, Deanna, I remaining time, I just want to mention the fact that this is what you're now working in. But I remember when we first had you as guest on the show, I was very excited that you were also involved in another program that Apex Brain Centers was offering. That was the whole 30 program?
Yep.
And what was that?
So the whole 30 is something that we basically led everyone through when I first joined the office, which is a 30-day cleanse where we eliminated a lot of foods that cause inflammation in the body. So it's good for really just overall health, but specifically also brain health. So we walk people through this challenge, and then for those people who missed it and would like to ever participate, you can always go and if you go on our Facebook page, you can see that there's a whole 30 page under that. And I actually have each individual video, so you can go through it like we did. So I went live every single day talking about kind of my process of getting through it, because giving up sugar for 30 days is not an easy task.
Now,
So,
have you kept off sugar since?
No. No sugar is very difficult. Sugar is snuck in a lot of things. But what I have learned now more about is that when you're looking at any neurodegenerative disease, if you want to be that person who lives past 100 and you want to live a good quality life, then sugar, you know, blood sugar regulation is important. So I think that even though sometimes we want to be healthier with the new year and we want to be more fit, really you can look very healthy and not be very healthy. So just regulating your blood sugar is a good first step.
And you also told me off there, which is getting pretty exciting. You mentioned one person you bumped into. This was almost a life changer for the person. What happened in that case? So that the person lost the weight and, you know, feels much better.
That's right. Yeah. So we had an individual who has, he's come through the program before, and he's been following our page, because a lot of times when people leave our office, they also do a home-based program. So that's what everybody gets. So really it's quite difficult sometimes for people to stay engaged and stay focused on what they're doing. So they follow our page and they see that, you know, we're all in this together. So he was following the page and decided to do the challenge and lost around 30 pounds. And it really was more than just the pounds. It was just, he just had the momentum he needed to get going. So he was eating, I think, the same thing every day. So, you know, a little variety is good for gut health, but he felt better. And I always said that even if one person did the challenge when I did it, I would have been happy. So there's a lot of people who really like the videos.
Well, I know you didn't get me on it last time, but maybe next time we'll see if we'll give it a shot. Dr. Tyler, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, either about the center or about some of the new stuff you're offering, what's the best bet?
So the best bet would be you can either check out our website, which is apexbraincenters.com, or you can give us a call at 828-708-5274.
Okay, and now you're on radio and Facebook Live. You know I'm going to ask you to repeat that information again.
Yep, so it is apexbraincenters.com, and the phone number is 828-708-5274.
Okay, again, Dr. Tyler, I'd like to thank you for being my guest the second half of the Blaine's World show. You're almost becoming a regular here, so you have to promise me that, which you did on this case, you have something new coming up, something different you want people to learn about, you let me know.
I can do that. But what I might do is record my night at the hyperbaric chamber and do it live, and then you can
In all
see it.
seriousness, let's talk about it. I don't know if we'll do it for a full, 8 hours or whatever, but let's talk about that. Thanks for being my
Okay.
guest this second half of the show. Also to Erik Dobell for being my guest in the first half hour, as well as to Amy Prisnash, my producer. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday here on WPVM. See you soon.